Hello and welcome to another episode of the Inforunners. Today we have the Crusader Mercury Buyer's Guide, and today on hosts we have Haze, myself. Up above we have...
I'm Execute, and off to my right.
Algared. Hey guys.
And today we're going to be, going over what we think of the Crusader Mercury now that we've got... reverse the verse, talking in length, and all the stats on the stat page, the new brochure that's come out. I think we've got enough to make a more definite sort of buyer's guide for this going forward. What do you guys think?
So I'm really unsure. sure you've missed something. But no, like seriously, this ship it's really interesting. My initial impressions were I had a very big red flag go off. I don't know if you guys did as well, but they sold this ship really hard in ship shape, and I still question why. I haven't spotted it yet, but it might be something down the line.
I agree. They really pushed the marketing hard on this, but I think they did an amazing job. This is the community's perception of what this ship is, and the sort of love for it. The complete lack of backlash, despite the fact this is an expensive ship. Sort of shows that they've done everything right. I mean, if we go over those reasons, I mean, look at the pre-orders. There was no extra added bonus. If you want that skin, you can basically just have to do the minigame.
Yes, but this ship has that nice strutless cockpit. It's what every backer keeps calling for. So yeah, for me, yeah, it is a pricey ship, but it does seem to tick all those boxes that backers are usually after. Does it have that red flag? Is there something that is not that we don't know yet? The hard sell in ship shapes seem to indicate that. But then I'm used to at least John Crew and co saying that the designer, Sarah, plugging her windlass cockpit just seemed to work as well. So.
Well, I think they've learned a lot of lessons from previous concept sales over the this year. And they've all brought this to bear. And if they were on the far right earlier this year with, let's say, the Hercules sale, then they've gone on to the far left and learnt from all those mistakes. And it really shows with the marketing, this concept in general. And I mean, you've got several things. They've got an absolute stack of information. We've got very good brochure that actually tells us what the ship is about. They had a huge RTV and a separate ship shape that actually told us a great deal about the ship.
And we've also got the lore story that kind of ties a model of this ship really nicely into the universe. And it also makes that Star Wars comparison with the ship being the Millennium Falcon.
Yeah, boy, they've really pushed that idea of the Millennium Falcon smuggler vessel. Yeah. Even if that's not its primary function, which I think is more data running. I mean, this is like a herald on steroids. It's like you had a freelancer and a herald had a love child and then injected it with growth hormones. This is what we got.
If I took anything away from yesterday's RTV, is that Banus are Wookiees. That was like the most important question on that entire... it's terrible. The other thing I would like to bring up really quickly... Oh, you go ahead, Algared, I'll go after you.
I was going to say, even though they pushed that idea of the Wookie, the Star Wars link...
And can you imagine a Banu covered in hair? Like it's just a hairy Banu?
No, it'd just be a Wookie. But when I first saw just the short bit in the initial release, my initial thought was, this is the Millennium Falcon. This is the new Millennium Falcon of Star Citizen. Gone as the constellation as the Millennium Falcon. Yeah, the turret. I was saying I almost expected 2 turrets. So when they said it was 1, I was like, oh well, in the initial bit, I was kind of it's only 1 turret, but I was expecting 2 to be kind of that image of the Millennium Falcon, and sure enough, it's got 2.
Speaking of the Millennium Falcon, though, I think they wanted, and they talked about this, they wanted this to be an asymmetrical ship before they even got down the style, what it was going to be, and they knew they wanted data running, they knew they wanted it to be an asymmetrical ship. I think they were aiming for the Millennium Falcon before they got through the major beginning stages of concepting.
Sarah kind of gave that idea. She was pushing it. And when you look at the ship, it's not asymmetrical. They might say it's asymmetrical, but come on, really?
It's just the nose
maybe
is
the
changed.
nose. It's like
It has the feel of being asymmetrical, but in terms of the way it interacts with flight, it's not asymmetrical.
The cockpit is dead in center of the ship.
But, yeah,
If you actually look at the layout of the ship, it is pretty much. It doesn't need to be asymmetrical. It's not like the Caterpillar, as an example, where the whole cockpit hangs off one side of the ship. It is literally in kind of like almost name only. I don't know how to call that,
Yeah.
but you know what I mean.
the only reason it's asymmetrical is it chopped off that little bit of a nose, and that enables that rec room to basically be a glassed-in window, so you can actually see out in space. So it makes it into an observation deck rather than being enclosed.
if that's what it is, I mean, maybe it has some other function we don't know yet. But like, I have some real beef with that because if you're going to do an asymmetrical design and it's going to be a data runner, it's going to have sensors. You think, unlike the original Herald design, it actually have a function. Like at the moment they've gone, we want asymmetrical, we'll do that, and we'll have a reason to be asymmetrical. Nah, forget that. As far as I'm concerned, when it comes to design and art, it should be fused in one. You go, okay, I want asymmetrical design. What is the reasoning behind the asymmetrical design? It could be any reason. It doesn't have to be an important reason, but actually make it a part of the ship. I think
the reason for the asymmetrical design of his ship is that call out to the Millennium Falcon. And I think
that's the worst reason in my mind.
It might be the worst reason in your mind, but that is the reason.
They also know from previous sales that asymmetric ships sell better, aka the Herald, the Caterpillar, and any others that you can think of that I can't think of at the moment.
I'm not going to argue with that, but what's to say you can put some, extra sensors along the side just to give it a reason? Like that's something you can tack on after.
Yeah, I'd also say I actually think, to agree with you, as the asymmetrical ships have gone into concept sales, this is probably the lightest of them. As in, it's just the nose only. Because literally, you chop the nose off, the whole thing is mirrored. It's just like every other ship, pretty much.
And they've deliberately done it like that so that the thrusters don't get unbalanced. John Crew even said that. We've got that when you do asymmetrical, it screws up the thrusters, and this one doesn't screw up the thrusters. It's just so they've really just got the feel of asymmetry on a symmetrical ship.
Mm-hmm.
So the selling point of it's asymmetrical. Give it a big thumbs down because it isn't. It's a symmetrical ship with a feel of asymmetry.
I got a little question for you guys. How do you feel about this ship being the same price as the Terrapin?
I think the Terrapin's overpriced.
Well, you see, it's a good comparison because the Mercury is a job-specific ship, like the Terrapin. Terrapin is scanning and exploration. This is info running on steroids compared to the Herald, at least. And it has added functionality. I mean, at the end of the day, the cargo makes it less comparable to the Herald, and you start comparing it with freelancers and constellations. So yeah, it's very interesting.
I think it's kind of starting to show the kind of weakness in the pricing model of the game. Like there's just, like Algared said, the Terrapin is way too high priced for what it is. But even then, as soon as you start to drop it back to the next ship and you look at something like, say, I'm going to chuck one out there, the Super Hornet. I know that's not the next one out there, but the fact that the Super Hornet to this is only like $20 to $40, depending on Warborn or not, that blows my mind.
You've also got to look at the timeline though, because when the Terrapin went up in price, it was during the Hercules period where they were charging big amounts, and they thought they could get away with those sort of things. And then now they've probably gone to the point where, okay, we put the Terrapin back on sale for like $220, and who bought it? It's sort of like, yeah.
And the other thing is, we know this has got scanners, but we just don't know the size of them. And the only two ships I could find where they've actually given any information about the scanners is the Terrapin, where it's got the utility mounts, where it just says scanners 2, and the Aquila, where it says the turret scanners 2 size 2. And that's all we know.
When you and I went through that, Algared, it was really interesting too, because there were ships like the Herald that just had no mention of scanners at all.
Yep.
It was, they're gone. So until
honestly,
we actually...
They've removed scanners from all ships, I think, until they actually figure out where they want those to be placed. Like, why balance first?
I listed on the Aquila. in the turret module as
But
2 size 2, and they're listed on the Terrapin as 2 utility mounts. That's
Yep,
it.
you know what I'm saying. Majority of ships, though, it's not there anymore.
But what I think what Algared's trying to get at is it's the value of this ship is either going to increase or decrease based on that as well. Like if this ship has just to throw it out there, let's just say it had 1 size 2 scanner and the Terrapin has 2 size 2 scanners, that still makes this a really valuable ship. The fact that it can scan, info run, and cargo up to the level of a Connie, and it's the same price as a Terrapin, that's disgustingly awesome for its price.
Yeah, it's like apples and oranges here because the Terrapin is essentially omnidirectional. It's like you're searching in every direction here. These things like the Herald focused a beam in one direction in a cone. You're focusing on interception
That's not
and
correct.
transmission.
That depends how you use them. You can actually, we've seen the scanning
It's
system.
primary,
You can
main
change.
ones, it's dishes. That's the primary
You can
purpose.
change. Like if you look at how the prospector works at the moment, that has got the most basic implementation. Sorry, I've got a bit of a tongue tie. Of scanning, and you can have it wide beam and it does it 360, or you can chuck it to 180 or 90 or 40, or really into a little narrow beam. You can do whatever you need to do, and I'm pretty sure
The prospector has the same radar dish as the Terrapin, though, as opposed to the Herald.
I don't know where you got that from, but okay, I'll just take
Well,
your
it
word
used
for it.
to. But anyway, the point is they have talked about there's 2 different types of scanning, and it's going to be you either do it in a cone or you do it in a wide area. One's going to be easy to, the different sorts of scanning. We're going to have different sorts of scanners. At the end of the day, info running, the type of needs for that is very different from wide area scanning. Which that ship is going to be very focused on.
The other thing that
Algared, can I just sorry because I want to finish this topic. That's the thing though. They've never really detailed those 2 differences. They've never said, I don't know where you've got this 2 different scanner things from because I've never heard it before. I've never heard that there's 2 different scanners. I was always just told there is a scanning system and that's it.
I'm pretty sure they did it on one of the round tables or something else where they all got talked. And they actually...
I think that kind of indicated if you're trying to get information, you need it on a narrow beam. If you're trying to get, if you're just trying to find stuff, you do it otherwise. So it's just that scanning narrow, just like you can do with the prospector at the moment, as you're saying. You can either do the 360 or get
I was aware all scanners could do it, like you're saying.
Yeah, so just saying for info running, you need to do that. I think the advantage of the Terrapin having those 2 scanners, or the 2 separate scanners, and even the Aquila having the 2 separate scanners, means you can actually scan for 2 different things at a different time. You can have one on narrow band, one on wide band. I'm imagining,
or different chip type scanners. So whether you're doing
infrared / whatever. The interesting thing was that when they were asked about how Mercury gets the data, John Crew seemed to imply yesterday that you either upload it by going and getting it, or you download it and gather it through the ship. So he seemed to imply that the ship has scanners, but does it have scanners?
He didn't want to go into details, to be honest. If you give him credit, he said, "Oh yeah, you're going to get it," and
you're going to get it one way or the other.
How?
Yeah, but we do know, based on at least the layout of his ship, it's got a massive big scanner. And next to the computer terminals, it seems, or next to the computer,
they've indicated
it's got that little room
as well.
But that little room to the side looks like it's got 3 terminals in it. So, yeah, I'm guessing this ship could go into hacking. It could go into the scanner rate. It almost sounds too good to be true.
The reason I bring these things up is if it can scan and gather data, it's going to be able to make it almost makes the Terrapin and the Herald obsolete, purely based on the fact that it's got 5 computers compared to the Herald having 1, and the Terrapin has only got 1 as well. Like, this is just going to gather so much more data.
This outdoes the Carrack in medium-sized computers. The Carrack only has 3. This
They'll
is
fix
5.
that in time. I mean, the stats on the Carrack, it's grown. Those are old. We don't know what the Carrack is currently going to be.
We can only go on the current information.
The reason why I'm coming around to this is I think this is the red flag. Like, it sounds too good to be true. This ship is pretty much a constellation plus an info runner, but we don't have the details about the info running part. And it's really required for this ship because it's the only other Inforunner besides the Herald. But also, they don't detail the scanning, they don't detail the Inforunning. And they're both red flags for me. Whether they're good or bad, just not telling us is bad. Like, I want that info.
No, I think in terms of scanning, this is not a dedicated scanner. It is an Inforunner. It's basically focused on Inforunning. It's definitely going to be a lot better than the Herald. But the interesting thing is it actually combines two types of ships, cargo and Inforunning. I think that's the takeaway of this.
What I'm trying to say is I actually think it could go to 3. I think you could do Inforunner, scanning, and cargo. But they haven't elaborated enough.
I don't think they will either.
Well, as I said yesterday in the RTV, when that asked the question, it was basically we've got an idea how it wants to work, but we haven't got, there'll be things we've got an idea how it works. We'll talk about that, and then the tech will catch up later. And what was the ship I used as the example?
Prospector.
The Prospector. We talked about that, and they changed about 1% of it to make it work when the code came in. And I imagine that's what will happen with scanning. They've got an idea how they want it to go. The frustrating thing for us as customers is they say buy the ship on the merits of what it can do, and sometimes that ship changes so much that what they sold it of is no longer anywhere near what it can do.
And the other flip side of that, Algared, is when they ask for that faith, but then they don't give us the return that faith and giving us the ability to easily and accessibility change our ships. Slap in the face. Like it doesn't go both ways.
You shouldn't be buying this guy if you're trying to get a scout. I don't think you should be selling off your Terrapin if you wanted to do was exploration and scouting. This is not the ship for you. I don't think it competes with the Terrapin, but it definitely competes with the Herald. And that's what it's marketed for. We should be going off what they've marketed as its primary role. Listen to that. That's the message you want to take home. Don't assume anything else.
Look, I'll put it to you this way, Haze, and you answer me this in the best way you can. All right? This thing's got 5 computers. If it's only got a small scanner on it, doesn't that bottleneck the ability of the 5 computers? But if it's got a medium scanner, which kind of does put it in competing terms with the Terrapin, doesn't that kind of worry you about how good the Terrapin is, especially that it's considering exactly the same price? Like, you look at those both perspectives, and they, no matter which way you lean, like it's got to fall somewhere in the middle there, or it's not going to work. And that's such a narrow place to fall. I'm really worried.
It all comes down to their game balancing, and they're not ready to get there yet. We are so far out from this game mechanic coming in. It's sort of like with the Vulture. When are we going to see salvage? Years away. And this is going to be exactly the same as that.
If they were to
have answers to those questions.
If they were to buff the Terrapin to say 2 large scanners and this only had 1 medium, then I could probably understand the Terrapin existing, especially at its price. But
Terrapin's not an Inforunner.
But what it's listed at the moment is it's got 2 small scanners, and that just doesn't fly with me.
I suppose the big question is, how are scanners different from the radar? How do they operate? What advantages do they bring? Because I know we were looking at the radar capabilities of half a dozen ships yesterday in comparison to this, and it was on par. There was no real difference between any of the ships in terms of radar. I think it was.
One is made for Inforunning. It's got the computers. It's got the data banks. It can do that stuff. Terrapin's not even on the radar for Inforunning. It's not its primary purpose. People buy that for a completely different reason.
Yep, I can understand where you come from, but what we're trying to say is they both have scanners. And the point is, if you've got a scanner, because the way they've detailed at the moment, there's no reason you can't do a bit of scanning with this ship using it if it's just a small scanner.
We won't know that until we get there.
And that's what we're saying.
And that's what we're saying.
I don't think they're going to let it do it that way, though.
Well,
I really don't think that's going to play out.
Wait and see, because, like the info...
Do you think buying this as a scanning ship is a bad idea? I do.
Yeah, if you're buying it as a scout, yes, it's a bad idea, because it's not a scout. It is an Inforunner. But if you're using your scanners as your means of gathering information...
Actually, this is probably bad as an exploration ship, because it probably won't be kitted out specifically for that type of scanning, and maybe the scanning may be subpar compared to ships that are specifically tailored to that.
short work with this. This is what we're trying to say, that the scanning is not developed to the level where we can make informed decisions as consumers to properly buy these ships with scanners, because we haven't been given the information, and there's a glaring oversight. And
I don't believe for a second that a Terrapin or the Aquila or the Carrack will not be up to par with scanning to do their jobs.
That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that this could also possibly tread on their toes, and I don't want that to happen.
Do you think they'll let that happen, though?
I don't know.
It doesn't matter if it doesn't have scanning, because this ship does have other arrows in its quiver. It does have the cargo capacity, and it does have the info running ability, and that's basically what it is. I don't agree that it's primarily a smuggler, though. If it's only got 3 little box type units or 3 units of shielded cargo space, does that really make it a smuggler?
This ship is only focused on like 2 things. It's got cargo going for it, and it's not a defensive type ship. It's not good at. I say it's a blockade runner, but this thing's the sort of thing that runs away from trouble, not tries to get through it. So I do think it's a bit disingenuous.
It's not a blockade runner.
No, but at the same time, it's not really. It's not any more of a smuggler than any other ships, because you got like the Phoenix and the Taurus and the freelancers. These guys are all supposed to have abilities to smuggle, and the Cutlass. At the end of the day, these ships all on the same boat.
The big tell was in the RTV yesterday when someone asked the question, are you going to be able to have those cargo containers that change the types of cargo? And that's very simple. Like, if this can only have 3 SCU of hidden smuggler cargo, that's that special area, who gives a damn? When you can fill the entire cargo bay of this or any other ship with contraband and just run through. And I actually think that would where the strength of the ship would be, is the fact that if you could just fill it full of contraband and blockade run through. And they did also say the Constellation is, well, they didn't put it in these words, but the Constellation was the fastest ship in this class. It's now this, because they said that yesterday.
Well, you've also got to remember the Constellation is a large ship, whereas this is a medium ship. So in terms of the size for its class, I think that can still be true.
Oh, come on. Like, every ship that comes out and says it's a fast ship, it's the fastest ship in its class. And when it comes out, it's like it has to actually fit in the balance of things. And then I don't believe that for a second.
Well, the only difference between this ship in engine and thrusters at all, other than some being fixed and some being adaptive or whatever you call it, is it has 1 less main thruster than the Connie. The Connie's got 4, this has got 3. So if this is a medium and that's a large, this is definitely faster.
Or at least should be.
Well, we'll see.
I'm
not holding my breath.
Yeah. With what I was saying about the scanning, that is not detractive from this ship. It's detractive from the other ships that are around it in the same price point. So I want to make that clear. This ship is great for what it is, but if it does what I think it's going to do, it's going to make other ships look bad. So that's even more of a reason to get.
Well, you talk about detracting. I'd like to get over first the attractive points. This thing, if you're buying this ship, the attractive points are 1, info running. You want a beefier Herald? Get this, honestly. You want a good daily driver that can do info running and do decent cargo? Because this steps on the toes of a lot of cargo haulers. We're talking about freelancer, Tutlasses, and Constellation classes. This is sort of somewhere in the middle of all of those. This is really good. What this doesn't do, its negatives why you don't want to get this, is it can't fight. It's lousy in a fight. It's not a fighter. But the Freelancer, the Cutlass, and the Constellation, they're the sort of ships that hold their own. You know?
Well, even yesterday they talked about Wookie, when I was talking about Wookie, you know, and doing the comparison, the Connie is still talked about in CIG as being space superiority, because it's got the size 5s or size 4s and to quote John Crew, 1 million missiles. I'd overtake that statement, but it still kind of holds true. It's got tons of missiles.
If I was to give my kind of like final closing points on this ship, it would literally be, think of you and your friends and what you want to do on that ship together. This ship is more runaway, where the Constellation is more attacky, pew-pew-pewy. I think you would have more fun in a group on a Constellation than you would on this ship.
it really gets me the weapon design on this. They thought, okay, let's put some fixed gimbaled weapons. Let's put 2 turrets, and we'll make them all size 2. 6 size 2 sounds, oh yeah, that doesn't sound so bad until you realize you need 3 people to operate that, all to converge on a target. Then you realize, oh shit, this thing's really not very good at anything. What they really should have done, this is just my own personal opinion, if they'd been a little more intelligent about it, is reduce that 6 size 2s to 4 size 3s and stick it onto the turrets. And just like 2 people can converge a decent on 2 separate turrets, because then you've got coverage above and below. You can shoot forward. At the end of the day, that would have made this so much better.
So you're saying have the 2 turrets kind of linked top and bottom, but
no,
one person controlling them?
No. Instead of having 3 operations of separate guns, split it up to just 2, so you don't have a separation of fire between 3 different people.
So saying having a driver and 2 turrets instead of a driver that can shoot and 2 turrets.
And 2 turrets.
Yeah. So saying merge all the guns.
A concentration of firepower over 2 points instead of 3.
So how would you have done the turrets? Have the turrets each with just 2 guns, or would you have given them an extra gun?
2 size 3s each.
Yeah, so check them all up a size.
So take them all up, but reduce the guns on the
front.
When Algared and I were talking about this ship yesterday, one of the things that we both commented on, though, is that's really interesting about this ship is and the last ship I can think that was done on was the Starfarer, Algared, and that's the backwards-facing turrets. I think it's really interesting. Like, they've designed this ship to run away. Like, that's what its primary thing is. Don't fight, get the hell out of there. And I kind of like the fact that the turrets face backwards. I know that sounds stupid, but think of how many ships... Like, I can think of at least 5 off the top of my head, Algared, where I would prefer the turrets to go backwards.
Yeah, it's just so...
Sorry, Sarah did say that the turrets are 360. But if you look at the... If my picture wasn't there, where it is on the picture, you could actually see the turret almost looks like it's sitting up against a recessed front section. It seems to be made to actually want to fire backwards. And I thought, when I first saw those pictures, I was thinking, this is awesome. This is a ship where you've got some good, 2 turrets that are going to be firing backwards. This is a ship for running away. It seemed to me a classic thing that you want in a merchant ship. You don't want to be taking your merchant ship up and trying to gun your way through. That's what your Banu blockade runners for. That's what your armored ships are for. This thing is for running normal cargo and P-bolting when the pirates turn up.
Yeah, I personally think the weapon placement and configuration is just, it's so bad that that's your only option.
Yeah, well, I thought it was an awesome option to actually have a ship that the turrets face backwards.
I kind of think the price of the ship compared to the Constellation and the size a little bit going down and the loss of a few of the things are reflected in that's why the ship is cheaper. Like, it looks really attractive to people. Oh, it's only $200, so to speak. When something like the Constellation Andromeda is, what, $275 now? Something like that. But you can see why that... Yeah.
It hasn't changed.
Or is it still $225? Well, okay. Well,
it's at parity.
Yeah. But
it's a hard sell when you put it like that. This seems like a ship you might have a more fun in a particular way as a daily driver. The Constellation is definitely still, more bang for your buck, more abilities, let's snub rover vehicles, cargo in weapons and durability. I mean, at the end of the day, this is more specialized niche, but I think it's a niche that a lot of people could appreciate to a great deal. Like, it's a trade-off.
No, look, I think the big advantage with the 2 abilities this ship can do in terms of cargo running or info running or just regular cargo is the fact that if I've got the ship, I can go out one day and do info running missions and just do those. I could take extra cargo along as a bonus, but I can be mainly focusing on my info running. Another day I can come in and say, I'm bored of doing info running, I'm just going to do cargo today. I don't need to pull out another ship. I don't need to go and buy a new ship. I just need to use the same ship. And that's something I can't do on my Connie. I can't do info running on my Connie because I don't have the computer banks to store that information. But I can go do pew and cargo running. And
speaking of cargo, by the way, I'm pretty disappointed. There's definitely enough room in the back to fill a vehicle. They obviously wanted to deny that decision from people so it wouldn't, pinch the toes of other vehicles that
it wouldn't be too much like a Connie.
Well, a Freelancer Max. I'm still have hopes for that one.
Yeah, keep dreaming.
Push to talk, execute.
Sorry. Yesterday, Algared and I were comparing about 5 different vehicles, and we were comparing 2 constellations as well as this, and it's so scary how similar these ships are on paper. It is really scary. And the one thing really, as I said, is it comes down to the guns, the lack of vehicle transportation, the missiles was a real big one from the constellation, but you gain a whole nother profession for that loss, and it really they really are very equal. It's really strange.
And when you look at the crew of the constellation, and the constellations are generally 3 to 4 crew. This is 2 to 3. And where the crew for the constellation? Pilot, turret gunners, and the P-52. How do we know that's the argument they're using? Because when you look at the Taurus is only 3 crew, and it doesn't have a P-52.
The other interesting thing
brought up that image for you too, Algared. It took me a couple of minutes.
The other interesting thing is sort of the perception of value for this. Everyone here thinks this is great value. The community has embraced this ship a lot more strongly than they have ships in the past, or to date, I should say. But it's a $200 ship. How does it compare against a Prospector, which is like, what is that, $150?
I think now.
Yeah, it's $150 now. It's like,
it's weird, isn't it?
Big ship.
Yeah, it's big ship for the money, and I even when you look at the constellation, though, like if the constellation is really $225, because in my book it's $275, I thought it was now.
That might be with
that's the Aquila. No, that's the Aquila.
I thought the Aquila had gone up again, $50 again. I thought the Aquila was like $325, but I could be
You're
wrong.
right. Aquila was $275. They might have upped the price by $15.
I'll have to go have a look. But
it's $310, I think.
The point I'm trying to make is there's not a lot of gap there between the top of these superiority fighters, these high-end advanced starters like the Vulcan, the Vulture, and the Prospector, to all of a sudden it's a much bigger ship. If you've already gone to 150, doesn't it make so much more sense to chuck another $50 and go to, say, something like this, where you're
imagine if you had a Herald and a Freelancer. It's like a no-brainer at that point, right?
Yeah, if you got a Herald and a Freelancer, it almost seems like a no-brainer. Melt them and buy this.
Yeah, it's like we've been saying, get rid of those single-seaters and get those multiple ships that are going to have a longevity to them that you're actually going to want to keep, because a lot of those advanced starters are just not going to have any long life. You look at the Herald as an example. Now this has come along. You look at the Herald and you go, whoa, one small computer and one small scanner. This has 5 computers and a scanner, and it does all the cargo,
I think for the medium-sized ships, this is, because it is almost the same as Constellation, this is good value for money for the medium-sized ships. But if you compare this to like a Banner Merchantman, can you call it value for money for what you get in game? Probably not, but that's comparing it to capital ships and then huge discounting. But if you do compare it to ships of what it should be compared to is ships of similar size, purpose, and function, this is a good bargain in that view.
Yeah. And the other thing we were talking about yesterday, Execute, was even though we think it really crunched on the Herald, was we actually still thought the Herald still had some value, some niche, just because of the role that it does, especially if it's still a little bit faster or it can do the missions a little quicker in its download. But it's very hard to not see this as crunching the Herald. And if you're only after one ship, or you're after a ship that can do, as we just said, info running and cargo, and you've currently got the 2 ships, you're probably better off just melting in, going for this ship.
All right, well, final thoughts.
I'd like to exit on another note as well. If you think this ship steps on the Herald's toes, just wait till you see the mining vessel of the similar size.
Yeah, and that's we've actually got another episode we've recorded and a bit of info that will be coming up. All right, so if you like this video, like this video. If you dislike this video, dislike this video. Leave a comment. We read every single one. We might not reply to everyone, but we'll try. We've also got a Discord. If you want to ask us a question, that's in the description below. I've been Execute. This is
Algared.
And below.
This has been Haze, and
catch you next time.
We're out of here. Take care.